ready to go.
Hey guys, welcome to this 5-part series called Breaking the Chains. Now, what this series has to do with is how I've increased my FTP as well as my performance, specifically my actual watts performance over the last month plus. Now, this is a journey that I went on this year. The goal was to ensure that I got stronger before I started losing weight. Yes, my weight did come down. I'm finally at a point where I can say, not only am I closer to my goal than I've ever been, but I've also gotten below sub 80 kilograms, which has helped my watts per kilogram, but that's not how I wanted to measure my performance increase. I wanted to measure my performance increase by looking at my actual watts, my 5-minute power, my 20-minute power. In this first part of the series, we're also going to talk about some of the challenges that I've gone through, not only losing weight, but also some technical issues.
Ah! God damn it, man.
Connectivity issues. Now, if you guys have been watching my channel, you know that I've had issues with my trainer. I've had issues with my Bluetooth connections that have all in a way impacted how I perform. The other thing I'm going to touch on is my recent increase in VO2 max, as well as my fat max. Now, I use a Caliber Biometrics mask, which I know is a single source of data, but it's what I got. But I've been using it long enough to know when something feels right in terms of data performance and when it feels off. And I can tell you that lately it has been on par. It has been basically aligned with how I feel when I race. So let's talk about where my FTP is at now. Officially, I'm at 294 according to Zwift. Now, this came about on a FRR Super 6 stage where it was an individual time trial, and I could not believe the power that I was able to sustain.
Fuck me, man. That bridge at 2% feels like you're hitting a brick wall. Oh my god. I'm gonna turn around.
I'm on the results, I'm just counting. I'm still in the results. ZTR lost 38 seconds. Then they picked up a minute 20, which means they're 38 a minute 20, 50 seconds. And then they lost 15. Oh, that's going to be close as hell between OTR and ZTBR, and then we're third.
When I started off the race, I got into the low 300s average and basically kept that all the way through to the end of the race. Now, in prior races, I had already accomplished that with my 5-minute power. Staying in the 300s felt good. So I ended up going up the grade in order to test my 5-minute power. I knew I was getting very close to a B pace group range, which means 4.2 and above for 5-minute power or 3.3 and above for 20-minute power. And because I knew I was getting close, I wanted to test it out as best as possible. And so went up the grade, hit my 5-minute power, and really as soon as I got to 4.3, I basically stalled out. I was like, all right, I'm done. I accomplished my goal. I wasn't going to push it any further. Now, moving on to the next races that I did, tiny races, the Thursday night Rhino Crits, as well as the Friday Super 6 FRR stage race. And my power stayed the same. I was able to stay in the 4.2 and above, 5 watts per kilogram, 3.3 and above, 20-minute power. Actually, I ended up hitting for the FRR time trial, I ended up hitting about 3.6 for my 20-minute power, which I was completely mind blown. I didn't believe that I could actually hold that power. And part of my success recently has been the fact that mentally I crossed that barrier from feeling like I can't do it to feeling like I can.
You can do it!
Now, when it comes to my FTP numbers, I've never looked at the watts per kilogram as the official number. I've always looked at the raw watts as the official number. And the reason for that is when you're looking at races, when you watch races, whether it's on Zwift or in real life, some of the strongest riders, yes, they're light, but they're holding 400 plus watts, 500 plus watts for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour plus, 2 hours plus, depending on the demands of the race. And so I never wanted to look at just my watts per kilogram, which is why I wanted to increase my strength first, then start to cut back on weight. Now, my weight cut also coincided with Marine Corps' 250th birthday. And so I figured I'd give myself a challenge to try and fit into my dress blues, but we'll touch on that in the end. Now, throughout all of 2025, my FTP has actually gone back and forth. If you look at what intervals.icu says, back in July, I was in the 290 range. Now, Zwift never said that, but looking at the numbers, I was holding about the same watts back then as I am now. I'm doing slightly better now, especially if you look at my racing experience, my successes, all of my, different scores, whether it's the VLO or the Zwift racing score, have all gone up since the beginning of the year. And the VLO from the Zwift racing app site, if you look at it from last year to this year, it's gone up significantly. And a big part of that has been my weight loss. And I never wanted my weight loss to be the main factor of why I was succeeding. But this is cycling. Watts per kilogram is king, unfortunately.
Feel that power to weight ratio.
Now, I did a little bit more research into that, to why that is, but we'll save that for another episode because I do want to dive a little bit deeper into that, because I feel like for me, mentally, what was holding me back was this idea that I'm not strong enough, when in reality, if you look at strength and weight, like horsepower and torque, when it comes to cars, you'll see that the two are in combination will create a fast vehicle and can overcome various challenges. Now, my FTP, like I said before, has bounced around throughout the year. I've gone up as high as 290, gone as low as 240. And really that just comes down to moment where I was at. Some days I was stronger because I was working harder and consistent. Other days I wasn't as strong, or the type of test I was doing was exposing where my weaknesses were at. If you've ever done a 20-minute power test in Zwift, that 20-minute FTP, you know that that's a very different test than a ramp test, and a very different test than going up the grade. But there are plenty of videos out there, so I'm not really going to cover that. I can tell you that the true challenge in increasing your FTP, and the true identifier rather in whether or not your performance is increased, is what you do in a race. Can you hold a sustained wattage for 30 minutes plus? Which I believe is how Zwift measures FTP when it comes to post-ride or post-race increase. You can hold it for 30 minutes above, then they start to really calculate, okay, have you gone up, have you not gone up? Which I don't think they'll ever show you if you've gone down, that would suck. But if you've gone up, they will definitely show you. Now, in-race FTP jumps have happened to me multiple times this year. Like I said before, I've gone from 240 to about 270, stayed at 270-ish for a while, and then jumped up to about 290 most recently, 294 most recently. Now, moving on to my weight. I started off the year hovering in the low 90 kilogram-ish range. And what I mean by that is 89.9. I think it's the max that I started the year off with. So we'll call it, round up, call it 90 kilograms, depending on what I drank in the moment. Now, I choose to measure my weight first thing in the morning when effectively everything is out of my system. And the reason why I do that is because depending on what you eat, what you drink throughout the day, your weight's going to fluctuate a couple pounds here and there, or a kilogram and a half here and there. And so I needed something that I could measure consistently and know that the circumstances were consistent. And so I chose to measure it first thing in the morning, generally around the time that I wake up, use the bathroom, hop on the scale, snap a picture to record it, and then keep moving forward with my day. So what did I do to lose the weight that I've lost? So throughout the year, my weight has actually fluctuated quite a bit. Like I said before, I've gone as high up as 89.9, and as low as around 82 kilograms. And the reason why that was because I was trying to really tailor how I wanted to get to the weight cut phase of my performance increase. I wanted to see if I could keep certain nutritional components in my diet, or if I needed to eliminate certain nutritional components in order to accomplish my goal. And like I mentioned before, my initial goal was really to get stronger, then focus on losing weight. And then as the months progressed, I decided, you know what? Marine Corps' 250th birthday, let's set up that challenge. Let's go for it. Let's see if I can fit into my dress blues once again. So starting in the beginning of October, after some back and forth, fine tuning, finally decided on what I was going to do, which for me, you guys know I love steak, you know I love meat. That meant I was going to focus on a predominantly heavy carnivore diet.
Carnivore? Huh.
Which really emphasizes protein first and then energy sources second. What I mean by energy sources, I mean fats and carbohydrates. Now, because my racing schedule is very demanding for me, sometimes 4 to 5 days a week, I knew that I wasn't going to eliminate carbs completely. That's what the testing was for throughout the summer, throughout the, beginning of the year, mid-year. I wanted to see where that line was at. And what I figured out for me was that I only really needed carbohydrates when I raced. And I could get away with quite a bit. My average when it comes to racing is somewhere around 70 to 90 grams. Now, I burn more than that when I race. Like I said before, having the Caliber Biometrics mask allows me to really see what I can burn in a race. And so I knew that I had a big margin that I could fluctuate between when it comes to carbohydrate amounts. And so I decided when I raced, I would eat carbohydrates. When I wasn't racing, I wouldn't eat them. Now, there are days where I wasn't racing and I felt like I was craving carbs. My body was like, hey, we need something. And those are days that I ended up eating more protein, focused on the core of what my diet plan was going to consist of. Now, as I progressed through the month, we're now in November, I started noticing that I wasn't needing as much as I thought I did. I would race, I would see my power numbers go up, I would see my overall performance go up, but I wasn't including as much as I was initially. And I knew that was because my body was getting better adapted to being into ketosis and burning fat more efficiently. And so that allowed me to, over the last handful of races, almost all but eliminate carbohydrates from my racing.
No carbs for him, huh?
So now instead of 70 to 90 grams, I'm ingesting somewhere around 10 to 20. And my performance is still at where I need it to be at in order to succeed in some of the racing that I'm doing. Now, again, I'm racing in higher categories, stronger teams. So my overall results aren't as glamorous as when I was racing in the lower category. And so I talked with my coaches, talked with my team captains, especially as soon as I crossed that B pace group marker, talked to my captains. I was like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'd like to see myself. And because I'm on such great squads, they're like, let's do it. Let's push you. Let's see how hard you can go. And so all of my teams that I was on almost unanimously were like, all right, well, peace out. Good luck. You're moving on to the next ranks. Hopefully we'll see you up there, or, if things change, then we'll be here. And so over the month of October, what happened to my weight? Well, I started the month around 84, 85 kilograms. And I say that because that's what I had in my photo album. In reality, I'm pretty certain I started around 87. I just didn't grab pictures of it. And like I mentioned before, now I'm below 80 and quickly getting into the mid 80s or mid 70s.
Spandex! All spandex! Where's the spandex section?
Now for me, I feel like that's the right spot. Mid 70s, maybe mid to low 70s, 76, 74. I feel like that's the right spot to be because it's still challenging enough on climbs where I can build strength, but at the same time, it keeps me in a realm where I'm competitive. And so like I mentioned before, at the end, you'll find out whether or not I get into my blues and what my overall final weight was for this challenge. Let's talk about VO2 max and fat max. Plenty of videos out there talking about what VO2 max is, but when you have caliber biometric mask or any sort of indirect calorimeter mask, you can actually start to fine tune what those numbers look like. You can test and figure out, has the things that you've been implementing, are they working? Or are they slowing you down? Are they diminishing your results? And so that's basically what I did. Throughout the year, I've tested my VO2 max multiple times. I like using the ramp test in order to test my VO2 max because I feel like it pushes me to the limit. Now, I have done other things to test my VO2 max, but overall through the year, I had a 20-point increase in my VO2 max. In the beginning of the year, I was averaging in the 40s, and right now I'm averaging in the 60s. And again, a big part of that, I truly believe, is the weight loss, because that's part of the calculation on how you figure it out. And so when I saw that I got into the 60s, I was dumbfounded. I did the calculations multiple times. Now, Caliber's updated their app, so it actually shows you your VO2 max number in the app itself. But I still wanted to manually double check, because you never know. And sure enough, that's where it landed. Now, in order to get there, I feel like what's been a big part of that is doing tiny races every Saturday, pushing myself harder in ladder races, and ultimately, something I can't dismiss entirely is heat training, as well as being in ketosis. That also impacts your ability to improve your metabolic performance, increasing your VO2 max. And so while I would love to narrow it down to one specific thing that has helped me improve my VO2 max, it really is a combination of all of it. Same thing with my zone 2 fat max. Now, obviously being in ketosis, I'm burning more fat more often. And my fat max has gone from 170-ish in terms of my upper zone 2 boundary, meaning that's the highest I can go before my body's like, all right, we need to stop burning fat. We need to start burning more sugar. So now I'm in the 210 to 230 range. And I had to test it a couple times because the first time I did it, the numbers just seemed really off. And then ultimately, because I was doing that and then racing right after, I forgot to shut off the app, and the app recorded this extraneously long session and just had issues processing the data. So I did it again. And when I did it again, I made sure to stop the recording when I needed to stop it so I can really see where I landed. And when I go back through my recording, I can see that somewhere between the 200 and 230 range, my body was still burning 60% fat in terms of fuel ratio. That's pretty awesome, because that means when I'm racing and we're just cruising along, I'm still in my upper zone too. So any carbohydrates that I have in my system, any carbohydrates that I ingest, aren't going to really be utilized for my performance effort. Maybe they're utilized for other stuff. I can tell you in my racing, and while I would love to have confirmation of this, but in my racing, I've noticed if I leave my carbohydrates to like the second half of my race, my heart rate seems to stabilize towards the second half. I think it's just because the heart gets prioritized when it comes to glucose consumption. And what better way to improve racing than to have a stable heart rate? Now, again, some of the key takeaways on this is this wasn't luck. I didn't just stumble into a higher FTP, lower weight. It took effort, it took progress, it took patience. It took a lot of time looking in the mirror and telling myself, just because I'm not seeing the numbers now, doesn't mean that I won't see the numbers later. And again, this is the long-term goal. So finally, how did I do with my dress blues? There's a reason why Marine Corps uniform is looked at with both admiration and fear. Happy birthday. It hits. 19 years. A little tight. Bottom buttons suffering a bit. Actually, these buttons right here are suffering a bit. few more days and it would fit without a fight. About 6 months of planning and about 45 days of hard work. I can finally say they fit. Guys, I want to say thank you for those that have encouraged me, not only in the comments, but through other lines of communications. This earmarks the beginning of the next chapter of my journey. Still want to trim down a little bit, make sure this works perfectly, without fail every single time. But also now it's time to continue my progress on getting stronger, making that a prime focus once again. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed part 1. Part 2, we're going to talk a little bit more specific about some of the events that I did, some of the training rides that I did in order to improve my performance, and what I was focused on. Because again, for me, the focus was really getting to a stronger level, not just faster. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in part 2. All right, guys, hope you enjoyed. Now, in part 2, we're going to talk more specifics about training, what that looked like for me, some of the actual training rides that I did, which I normally don't do, and how I used my racing to help me train harder. And if you enjoyed this, I look forward to seeing you in part 2.